Most leaders say they're good listeners, but they're not. And that has created a listening deficit. That listening deficit is costing us $8.9 trillion in our global GDP. How did we get here? I'm the first generation in my family to attend university. And so many years ago, when my son got accepted into a university, I was thrilled. I was so happy. And when I'm happy, guess what I do? I go shopping. I went shopping for everything that his dorm room could fit. And when we checked him in, as he was busy working with student services, I decorated his room. I made his room as beautiful as ever. And I looked at it and I was happy. And as I drove home, I was delighted, pleased with myself. 3 weeks later, we had to visit him because it was his birthday. As I walked into his dorm room, strutting my delighted self, I noticed all the decorations were removed and replaced with one football jersey above his bed. I was so gutted. Like, what an ungrateful child. Wow. I looked around and saw everything I had bought behind a door in a garbage bag. I took time, effort, money, and did this, and this is what he did to me? Oh, I could hardly hide my disappointment when we celebrated his birthday. It took a while to get over it. But when I got over it and I reflected on it, I thought, why didn't I ask him if he wanted his room decorated? I could have asked him. I should have asked him. Instead, I made very good decisions in my head, great ideas and great solutions, and I did it for him without ever having any dialogue with him. You see, as the head of my business that runs leadership development across a lot of organizations, what I notice is this pattern in leaders as well, where they make decisions and design solutions for people in their organizations without ever having a dialogue with them. And then when it doesn't go well, they feel hurt, and we have a lot of conflict in our organization. The L in leadership is for listening. As part of our business, when my team goes into organizations, we run these surveys. And one of the questions we ask teams is, what do you need to feel respected? 98% of people in the organization say, I want to be listened to, I want to feel heard. That's a high number. But what we found surprising was that it wasn't just teams and managers, it was all levels of the organization. The C-suite had the same challenge. Board of directors had the same challenge. From bottom to top in our organizations, people have the need to be listened to. When we asked leaders in those same organizations how they rate their listening, 85% of leaders say they're good listeners. So what we have is a situation where we have very good listeners in organizations and a lot of people in the organization desiring the need to be listened to. When I looked at the Gallup's State of the Workplace report, the last 3 years, 70% of the workforce is not engaged. Key driver, leaders are not listening. That's the 70% that's not engaged, that's causing us to lose 8.9 trillion of our global GDP. 8.9 trillion is 9% of global GDP. To help you get to that, that's the same amount of money we spend for our entire healthcare sector. The same amount of money we spend for our entire energy sector. The same amount of money we spend for our entire IT sector. That's what we're losing because of this listening deficit. The L in leadership is for listening. And so when I'm in organizations, I hear leaders rumbling when they hear that they have to learn a new skill. I hear things like, I have important strategic goals to meet and listening is not one of them. I hear things like, where am I to find the time? I don't have time. Well, the Gallup report shows that best practice organizations have flipped the script. They actually have 70% engagement. And in those organizations, we have higher, better quality decision making. We have better quality solutions. We have high levels of well-being among people. We have trust. We have relationships. And guess what? Leaders have greater productivity. So the L in leadership is for listening. A few years ago, I'm facilitating a listening forum. This is an organization that our company has been working with to help them to cultivate a communication culture. In the middle of the session, a woman stood up, let's call her Jill, and she said, asked a question. Soon as she asked the question, another woman said to her, that question was already addressed on the app. And Jill stood up, shoulders strong, voice louder. That's precisely why I'm asking it here. I want the answer from a senior leader. I don't want an AI-generated response. The senior leader hosting the session looked very puzzled. She slowly got up and said, why would you think that? Our team meets weekly to review your questions and provide solutions. There's no AI involved in it. Jill softened her body, her voice softened, and she responded, well, how was I supposed to know that? Our office doesn't ever check the app because we all believe it's all AI generated. The leader agreed that after the session, they would send out information about how the questions are processed. The following week, the organization reported a 48% increase in questions submitted to the app. What this tells us is that listening is a skill that we can learn, but we learn listening when we start to listen, when we create space for dialogue, when we learn, when we modify our systems and iterate our processes. The L in leadership is for listening. Reducing our leadership deficit is a critical task. We've got to figure out the right questions to ask. Engage with our people without our masks. Design leadership and feedback processes that we broadcast. Really check in to understand and get the full grasp of the extent of the issues. And don't worry, you won't over-ask. Execute and listen. It's a good time to multitask. Our listening deficit is a strain, a burden we can't sustain. Our people are in pain. Many of them we can't retain, not only because they leave, but that their ideas we don't obtain. This kind of system will impact innovation with this kind of brain drain. Let's launch a leadership campaign. Let's launch a listening campaign. Let's develop our skills. We have so much to gain.